Let's begin with two members of the committee at center stage today. Rep.Schakowsky is an Illinois Democrat, Marsha Blackburn, a Tennessee Republican. Thank you for coming in. Let me start with this. We didn't learn much from Mr. Hayward today, did we?
Well, over and over again, he said that I wasn't part of the decision-making. I didn't know. At one point, Chairman Waxman asked him, didn't you get our letter that listed the questions? How come you weren't prepared in any way to answer those questions?
You know, John, there should be a division of labor, and the president should have laid this out on day one. Said, BP, you're responsible for this leak. Stop the leak. Federal government, federal waters, we need to clean it up. Let's get busy. Governors, mayors, you have availability of our resources. Congress, you need to do your due diligence, find out what happened, make sure it never happens again. We've not had that division of labor. We were trying to do our part today on that, find out what happened, and unfortunately it seemed that Mr. Hayward was not prepared to answer the questions.
Mr. Hayward was in the path of your inquiry, but your colleague, Mr. Barton, also got in your way to a degree. I want you to listen to a little bit more from Congressman Barton today at the hearing.
With the Attorney General of the United States, who is legitimately conducting a criminal investigation and has every right to do so to protect the interests of the American people, participating in what amounts to a $20 billion slush fund that's unprecedented in our nation's history.
You're a member of the leadership team. The leadership team went to Congressman Barton and said you twice apologized to Tony Hayward. You accused the White House of a shakedown and a slush fund. There may well be some legitimate questions about how the White House has handled this, how the fund will work. There are always legitimate questions about what the government is doing with big chunks of money. But is Congressman Barton now, in your view, should he be the ranking Republican on this key committee that deals with these very issues, oil, gas, offshore drilling?
Right, and Congressman Barton was clear that he was speaking for himself, that he was not speaking for the Republican leadership or the Republican conference. He didn't speak for me. And I think that, you know, he came forward with his apology. The leadership team will continue to look at this. I think the more important thing here is we want to make certain that action is taken. We've had a lot of rhetoric from BP, from the president, and John, what people want to see is action. They are ready to see this leak stopped. They are ready to see this cleaned up. They are ready to see the Gulf restored.
And the White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs sent out a tweet saying, elect the Republicans, give the Republicans control of Congress, and guess who will oversee this industry, oversee BP? Joe Barton. You see a political opening here?
Well, I think it was a really unfortunate statement. He called it a tragedy of the first proportion. Was he talking about the spill? No, he was talking about setting up this $20 billion fund to restore the Gulf and to repay to make the workers and the residents whole. And so it was a serious mistake. Yes, he did apologize, but I think that it was after pressure. Look, this does definitely go beyond politics, but we have seen situations where the Republicans have been trying to lay the blame pointed at the president, and I think that, you know, and we've seen them resist actually that BP should take full responsibility. John Boehner said it's BP and the public.
Well, shakedown and slush fund. Shakedown and slush fund were language repudiated by your leadership. I know you don't like those words, but he is not, Joe Barton, the only Republican to question how this trust fund will work. Michelle Bachmann, Republican of Minnesota, was here last night. I want you to listen to her take.
This is an appointee from the Obama administration who will be doing the payouts, and it's the pay-czar dealing with the administration. So this is very different from what we've done in the past. And while it's important that all the claims get paid, let's just make sure that this isn't a permanent ATM card.
Do you share those concerns?
Couple of points that I think we have to look at. First of all, BP said today that they realize that this is their responsibility under the Oil Protection Act, not only to pay for plugging that leak, but also for the cleanup. We need to make certain that that happens, and it is our responsibility as members of Congress to be certain that it's there. Now, it is unusual that the president said this fund is going to be handled by a third-party administrator, an independent administrator. Then we find out that it's the pay-czar. It would be better many of us think, for there to be an independent hand that is on that, and that the money goes to stopping the leak, doing the cleanup, and doing the restoration of the Gulf, and making certain that those individuals are made whole through this process.
We've talked about the executive branch role. You clearly have a lot of questions still for BP and didn't get your answers. But Congresswoman, you raised a point today about the administration, a legitimate question, and a bit more. I want you to listen.
The current administration also shares a significant portion of the blame for the oil spill. I mentioned MMS earlier, and the MMS officials approved inadequate spill response plans, and field inspectors rubber-stamped inspection papers submitted by oil companies.
There are fair questions to the administration. I assume you would both agree to that. But I want to ask you this question about your role in this, because we went back and looked at the oversight hearings held by Congress before this happened. In 2010, prior to this explosion and the 11 deaths and the catastrophe environmentally, 0 hearings in the House or the Senate on MMS or offshore oversight. Back in 2009, after a couple of damning Inspector General reports, there were 5 in the House and 2 in the Senate. Back in 2008, there were 0 oversight hearings by the United States Congress on this issue. And in 2007, 1 in the House and 2 in the Senate. Congressman Schakowsky, in that period I just mentioned, Democrats were in charge. Democrats held the chairmanships through that entire period. We could go back in time and probably find just as low a number, but is part of the answer here for Congress to take a hard look in the mirror too and say we need to do a better job?
I don't think there's any question. We certainly need the changes, and we got them. Michael Bromwich at MMS, at the helm of that agency that has been in bad shape through the Bush administration, where we had those regulators literally sleeping with the oil companies. And so
I understand that, and it's a legitimate issue, but your party's been in charge for a long time now.
No, well, not that long, but you're right that it's over time that we change the management there. And if there are holes in the law, we need to plug those holes as well, and we need to make sure that the law is enforced. But ultimately, this is BP's responsibility, and that was what was so shocking today, that Tony Hayward seemed so unable to answer. But not only that, said, well, we can't make a decision about what went wrong because we're still in the midst of an investigation. There's many more deep water wells in the Gulf itself. He better quickly do this, and there was a lot of pressure on him to move faster.
All right, we'll come back to this issue in the days ahead. I appreciate both of you coming in tonight. We'll also have your chairman, Bart Stupak, from the subcommittee with us later in the program. Thank you both for coming in. Please come back to see us. And when we come back as well, we'll talk to our reporters covering this story, and we will share with you new poll numbers just into CNN that show the big toll this crisis is taking on the President of the United States.